Welcome to the Alcohol Minimalist podcast. I'm your host, Molly Watts. If you want to change your drinking habits and create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, you're in the right place. This podcast explores the strategies I use to overcome a lifetime of family alcohol abuse, more than 30 years of anxiety and worry about my own drinking, and what felt like an unbreakable daily drinking habit. Becoming an alcohol minimalist means removing excess alcohol from your life so it doesn't remove you from life. It means being able to take alcohol or leave it without feeling deprived. It means to live peacefully, being able to enjoy a glass of wine without feeling guilty and without needing to finish the bottle. With science on our side, we'll shatter your past patterns and eliminate your excuses. Changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist podcast with me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, it is a delectable Oregon today. Really, truly delectable, like 80 degrees, sunny, perfect. We look to be having some higher temperatures this week and then some rain, pretty June-ish here in Oregon, but today it is delectable. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. If you're new, welcome. And we are in the midst of doing a series this month on when drinking less feels hard. And we're taking the real life challenges that people shared with me in the Alcohol Minimalist Facebook group. If you are not already a member of that group, I invite you to join. There's always a link in the show notes. Check it out. Come on over. We're the Alcohol Minimalists. In that group, I asked people about their specific challenges, what times or what things make it harder for them to drink less. And I got lots of different answers. And we are looking at all of these answers through the lens of alcohol core beliefs, which is something I call your ACBs. And I don't talk about them a ton. I should probably talk about them more. And so I thought this would be a way of us touching back on base with those alcohol core beliefs. And so far in this series, we've talked about the belief alcohol helps me relieve stress. We've looked at the difference between alcohol creating that short-term state change and actually providing real relief, which of course it doesn't do. Then we talked about alcohol makes things more fun and alcohol creates connections, especially in those social situations where alcohol feels like part of the experience. You know, dinners out, parties, weekends, being around friends who maybe aren't moderating. And today we are moving into another one of the big alcohol core beliefs. And this one is incredibly common because it often feels very, very reasonable. And it is the belief that alcohol is my reward. Now, before we dive into this, I do want to remind you that Mostly Dry July, the daily, is coming very soon. If you want daily support, daily focus, and a practical way to practice drinking less through July, this is exactly what it is designed for. Mostly Dry July, the daily, gives you a short touch point every day to help you stay connected to your goals, to really dive into your brain, and to keep practicing peaceful moderation or peaceful mindfulness, control, and avoiding all or nothing thinking, which is often a big trap. And we will do more than just those daily touch-ins. We're going to have weekly group coaching calls. I've got weekly brain boosts for you, a private daily podcast, lots of stuff going on. And you can find the link in the show notes. I would love to have you join us. Now, let's talk about the reward belief, because this one shows up in so many ordinary moments that it can be easy to miss. It shows up at the end of the workday for some people when you close your laptop, walk into the kitchen and think, I got through that day. I deserve a glass of wine. It shows up maybe for you when you're cooking dinner and the wine feels like the thing that turns that responsibility into something more enjoyable or kind of a ritual. It definitely shows up, at least for me, on Friday night when the week has been busy and demanding and my brain says, finally, I get to have this. It shows up on vacation, which I can absolutely testify to since I just came back from vacation. When you've worked hard to get there, packed all the bags, handled all the logistics, and you get there and it just seems like the first drink is proof that the break has officially begun. It can also show up after parenting, after caregiving, after managing household tasks, after solving problems, handling details, being the person who other people rely on. And at the end of all that, alcohol can start to feel like the one thing that is yours. The thing that no one else gets to ask for. The thing that says, I did enough today, and now I get something back. That is what makes alcohol is my reward such a sticky core belief. It doesn't always sound like a problem, right? Sometimes it actually sounds like and feels like self-care. Sometimes it sounds like celebration. It sounds like fairness. I worked hard. I was responsible. I handled the stress. I earned this. And I want to start by saying this really clearly, that the desire to be rewarded is not wrong. You are a human being with a human being's brain, and that brain is designed to seek reward, seek pleasure, seek comfort and completion. You are not supposed to live a life that is only responsibility, only production, only problem solving. You are allowed to want pleasure. You are allowed to want celebration. And you're allowed to want something that marks the end of effort. So the question is not, why do I want a reward? Of course you want a reward. The better question is, why has alcohol become the reward my brain reaches for automatically? And maybe even more importantly, is alcohol actually rewarding me in the way I want to be rewarded? On the Alcohol Core Beliefs mind map, alcohol is my reward includes thoughts like, I deserve a drink. I've been really good, so I get to treat myself. Alcohol is my one vice. It's not really a problem. And I get to have a drink. These thoughts matter because they show how alcohol gets framed as the prize, the treat, the thing that we've earned, or the permission slip at the end of anything that you've been exerting effort for. Once alcohol is framed that way, drinking less can feel like punishment. It can feel like you're taking away the one thing that helps you feel rewarded. It can feel like deprivation. It can feel like life is asking you to do all of this hard work, practice all of the self-control, and then at the end of the day, you don't even get your treat. No wonder it feels like it makes drinking less harder, right? So that's why this episode is not about saying you don't deserve a reward. You absolutely do. The episode is about questioning whether alcohol is the reward you actually deserve. Because sometimes what we call a reward is really just a coping mechanism in disguise. Sometimes what we call a treat is really a way to soften resentment. Anybody done that one? You're giving yourself a treat, but what you're really trying to do is soften resentment that you feel for other people because you have been giving and giving and giving and not getting anything back. Sometimes what we call self-care is really self-abandonment with a glass of alcohol. And sometimes when our brain says, I deserve this, what it really is saying is, I'm exhausted. I'm under-supported. I've overextended myself. And I don't know how else to make this day feel like it belongs to me. And that's worth looking at with curiosity and compassion. Let's talk about what is happening in the brain, because the reward belief is not just a thought floating around in your mind. It is a learned pattern. The brain learns through repetition, through reward and prediction. You know, and we've talked many times about dopamine. It's one of the key players in reward learning, not simply because it creates pleasure, but because it helps the brain learn what to predict as a reward and what is worth pursuing again. Research on dopamine and reward prediction error shows that dopamine helps encode the difference between expected and received rewards, which is central to how the brain learns from repeated experiences. Alcohol also interacts with reward circuitry, including dopamine systems involved in reinforcement, which helps explain why the brain can learn to pursue alcohol in response to familiar cues and contexts. In real-life language, this means that your brain is not only responding to the drink itself, it is also responding to everything that predicts the drink. For one person, that might be the moment the workday ends and the kitchen becomes the next place where responsibility is waiting. For someone else, it might be Friday afternoon, when the week is not quite over, but the brain has already started anticipating the weekend. It might be the first evening of vacation, when the bags are finally unpacked and the whole body seems to say, "Now we can relax." Those cues begin to matter because your brain has learned what usually comes next. It starts anticipating the reward before you've even taken the first sip, and sometimes before you've even consciously decided whether you want to drink. That is why the urge can show up so quickly. You might not even be actively thinking, "I want wine." You might just start moving toward the ritual. You pour while you cook. You open the beer as you start dinner. You order the cocktail because it's Friday, and that's what Friday means. The brain is super efficient this way. It loves patterns because patterns save energy. And if the pattern is hard work ends with alcohol, then eventually alcohol becomes part of how the day closes every single day. Not because you sat down and made a deeply intentional decision that ethanol was the reward that you wanted most for your life, but because your brain learned this is what we do when we're done. And that phrase, "when we're done," is really important because a lot of end of the day drinking is not just about pleasure. It's about transition. It marks the shift from work mode to home mode, or from responsible adult mode to off-duty mode. The trouble is that when alcohol becomes the transition, your brain may not learn other ways to come down from the day. It may not learn other ways to mark completion. It may not learn other ways to feel rewarded, acknowledged, or cared for. And then the moment you try to drink less, it feels like something's missing. This is why the wine while cooking example, which I hear all the time and definitely came up in the Facebook group, is such a good one. On the surface, someone might say, "I just love a glass of wine while I cook." And maybe that's true. Maybe they like the taste, the ritual, the glass, the feeling that dinner prep is a little more relaxed and a little more enjoyable. But if changing that habit feels very difficult, then we want to dig a little deeper. What is the wine doing in that moment? Is it making cooking feel less like labor? Is it turning dinner prep into me time? Is it creating a reward while you are still performing a responsibility? Those are very different questions than, do I like wine? And they are more useful. Because if the real desire is pleasure while cooking, alcohol is only one possible answer. If the real desire is feeling less resentful or that you're not, having to feed everybody again, then you have to understand that alcohol does not solve that underlying imbalance. And if the real desire is a transition out of work mode, there are other ways to create transition. Hey, it's Molly, and I'm here to talk to you about Sunnyside Med. That's right. Sunnyside has a new program that they've been offering that includes medication that can quiet alcohol cravings. It's called naltrexone, and it works by making alcohol less rewarding in your brain. And Sunnyside now offers access to naltrexone 100% online and combined with personalized care. Thousands of people have already joined Sunnyside Med and are cutting their drinking nearly in half. Sunnyside Med doesn't just give you a pill. It is a whole support system to help you reach your goals. I really want you to check it out, so visit sunnyside.co/minimalist to learn more and see if you qualify today. And this is where we have to be kind and honest at the same time. A lot of people are not using alcohol as a reward because their lives are too pleasurable. They are using alcohol as a reward because their lives are full of effort and the reward system has gotten narrow. The day is full of obligations and alcohol becomes the small, predictable pleasure at the end. The week is full of work and alcohol becomes the symbol of freedom on Friday. And again, you do deserve pleasure. You deserve freedom. You deserve rest. And you deserve to feel like your life is more than just checking boxes. But if alcohol is the main way that your brain knows how to access those things, then drinking less is going to feel like deprivation until you expand your reward system. And that's the real work of this episode, not just taking alcohol away, but expanding the ways you experience reward. Now, let's talk about reinforcement for a minute. In behavioral science, reinforcement is about what makes a behavior more likely to happen again. Positive reinforcement means a behavior is followed by something pleasurable or rewarding. So the behavior gets strengthened. Negative reinforcement means a behavior removes or reduces something unpleasant, so the behavior also gets strengthened. Alcohol can work both ways. It can provide pleasurable effects and it can temporarily reduce discomfort. Research examining reinforcement and alcohol use has found that positive reinforcement is associated with alcohol consumption broadly, while negative reinforcement can become especially salient in more problematic drinking patterns. For alcohol is my reward as a core belief, we are often dealing with both kinds of reinforcement at the same time. The drinking adds something. It adds taste. It adds ritual, a sense of indulgence, a feeling that the day has finally shifted into something more pleasurable. And it often reduces something, at least temporarily, like tension, boredom, resentment, the feeling of still being on duty. And that combination is powerful. The brain learns this gives me something I want and takes away something I don't want. And of course, it repeats that behavior. Now, that doesn't mean that you're weak. It just means that the behavior has been reinforced. But here's the question. What is being reinforced long term? If every hard day ends with wine, the brain learns that hard days require wine. If every Friday night begins with drinks, the brain learns that weekends begin with alcohol. If every vacation starts with cocktails, the brain learns that vacation equals alcohol. And if every act of being responsible is followed by drinking, the brain may quietly learn that responsibility requires compensation. And that last one is big. Responsibility requires compensation. I think for many people, this is the underlying belief that the belief underneath the belief. It is not just alcohol is my reward. It is my life takes so much from me that I need alcohol to give something back. I need to be compensated. If that resonates with you, I want you to pause and hear this without judging yourself. That thought is information. It is data. It may be telling you that you need more real rest. It may be telling you that you need to get a better distribution of labor in your house. It may be telling you that your days are too packed and your boundaries are too loose, and that your pleasure is too dependent on alcohol. None of that gets solved by beating yourself up. It gets solved by listening, by becoming aware. And this is where our approach really matters. We are not just removing alcohol and leaving a reward vacuum. We are asking, what did alcohol represent and how can I create that more honestly? If alcohol represents completion, how else can you mark the day as done? If alcohol represents freedom, where do you need more autonomy? And if it represents the feeling that I matter too, then where do you need to treat yourself as if that is already true before 5 o'clock? These are deeper questions, but they are also really practical because sometimes changing drinking habits is not just about what's in the glass. Sometimes it's about the life that is making the glass feel necessary. Now, let's look at some very concrete end of the day rituals. If alcohol is part of your end of the day ritual, your brain has probably linked several pieces of information together. The time of day, the location, the glass, the first sip, the exhale. Maybe that meaning is I'm done. Maybe it's I've made it. Maybe it's now I get to stop being responsible. So when you remove alcohol from that ritual, don't be surprised if your brain objects. It may feel like something is missing because something is missing. The cue, the behavior, the chemical effect, the meaning that you attach to it. That does not mean that you made a wrong decision. It means that you are changing a very practiced loop. I often tell people in the Facebook group, you got to expect to be uncomfortable. We can handle discomfort. Discomfort is reasonable. So instead of asking only, what can I drink instead? Ask, what are the ingredients of this ritual that really matter to me? Maybe the most important ingredient is the glass. Maybe it's the flavor, the pause, the temperature. Maybe the important ingredient is that you need 5 minutes where no one asks you a question. Maybe the important ingredient is not the drink at all, but the moment of standing in the kitchen and feeling like you have a tiny bit of ownership over the evening before everyone needs something again. Once you know the ingredients, you can build a ritual that actually addresses the need. Maybe the end of the day ritual becomes a non-alcoholic drink still in your beautiful glass. Maybe it becomes changing clothes, washing your face, turning on music, making cooking feel like less of a chore. Maybe it becomes stepping outside before you actually go into the kitchen. The specific ritual matters less than the intention behind it. You are teaching your brain, I can mark the end of the day without alcohol. Now, let's talk about end of the week drinking for you Friday night drinkers like me. Friday has a very strong cultural script. We made it through the week, so we deserve a drink. And the weekend starts when we get that drink in our hand on Friday. It makes sense, right? The brain loves a clean transition, but if every Friday night the reward is alcohol, then Friday becomes a cue for drinking, whether or not alcohol actually fits the version of the weekend you want. So before Friday, not at 5:15 when the urge is already running, ask yourself, what do I want this weekend to give me? Maybe you want rest. Maybe you want connection. Maybe you want fun. Maybe you want to wake up Saturday feeling clear and proud. Then ask yourself, will alcohol give me that, or will it give me the appearance of that for a few hours and then take some of it back tomorrow? That's not a rhetorical question. Sometimes you may choose a drink, but if you choose it with the full picture. Because the automatic reward drink is often not really about enjoyment anymore. It's about the script. right? I survived, so I get to drink. I worked, so I get to drink. I was good, so I get to drink. Now, being an alcohol minimalist means that we practice a different kind of reward, not reward as an escape, not a reward as numbing, but reward as care, as true pleasure, as acknowledgement, as restoration. And that's a lot better reward than the other kind, than trying to numb or escape your life. Let's talk about the 4S new belief system that I've talked about over the last few weeks. See, soothe, separate, and shift. Let's look at it here for this reward belief. First, see. When the reward belief shows up, it may sound like I deserve a drink. I've been good. I've earned this. Seeing it sounds like I'm having the thought that alcohol is my reward. That's what you're going to say. When you see that thought, when your brain offers up, I get to have this, you are literally going to respond to yourself. You can say it out loud if you want to, or inside your head, I'm having the thought that alcohol is my reward. That one sentence creates space between the belief and the behavior. And then we soothe. This is where you normalize the desire without turning it into a command. You might say, of course I want a reward. I worked hard today. Or, of course my brain is offering wine. This is how I've marked the end of the day for a long time. Soothe matters because if you respond to the reward thought with, I shouldn't want this, you'll probably create deprivation. And deprivation often strengthens desire. Then we're going to separate. So we've got see, soothe, separate. This is where you separate the facts from the story. The fact that you had a long day, but the story is that wine is what you deserve. The fact that it's Friday and the story is that the weekend only starts when I have a drink in my hand. This is where your power comes back because the facts may be true, but the story is optional. It is a fact that today is Friday, but that does not mean that alcohol is the only way my weekend starts. Finally, the last one is shift. We've got see, soothe, separate, shift. And a shift might sound like I deserve a reward that actually restores me. Or I can mark the end of the day without borrowing from tomorrow. Or alcohol is one possible reward, but it is not the only one. And here's one of my favorite shifts for this belief. I'm allowed to create pleasure before I'm desperate for it. Think about that. I'm allowed to create pleasure before I'm desperate for it. Because if the only pleasure in your day happens at the very end, and it always happens in a glass, your brain is going to cling to that glass really tightly. Part of this work is learning to seed reward throughout your life. Not huge things, not expensive things, not unrealistic rewards, but small, real moments of pleasure, of agency, of beauty, of rest, and completion. It means music in the car, a break from multitasking, a Friday plan that is not just about alcohol. This is how you expand the reward system. And that's your practice for this week. Choose one reward drinking moment. It might be the end of the day, it might be Friday night, vacation, cooking dinner, or the moment after you finish something hard. Then ask yourself 3 questions. 1, what am I trying to reward? 2, what do I want this reward to give me? And 3, will alcohol actually give me that, or is there another way to create it more honestly? If you still choose to drink, practicing pausing first, that's great. Still create one real reward before alcohol. It might be rest, it might be quiet, it might be movement. The point is not to prove that you will never drink. The point is to teach your brain that reward does not automatically equal alcohol. Because over time, your brain can learn something new. It can be rewired. It can learn that Friday can feel good without overdrinking. It can learn that cooking can be pleasurable with or without wine. And it can learn that vacation can feel freeing without abandoning your goals. Maybe most importantly, it can learn that you do not have to earn care by exhausting yourself first. So, as we close today, remember this: you deserve rewards, you deserve pleasure, you deserve rest and celebration, and you deserve a life that has more in it than responsibility. But alcohol may not be the reward you actually deserve. The reward you deserve is the one that gives back to you, the one that restores you, the one that helps you feel cared for in the moment and proud of yourself later. One that doesn't require you to pay for it with sleep, anxiety, regret, or lost time tomorrow. And that's what we're practicing here. That is how we create a peaceful relationship with alcohol. So, next week in the When Drinking Less Feels Hard series, we will be talking about the final alcohol core belief, and that is alcohol keeps me going. We'll look at boredom, being home alone, wanting one more drink, extending the night, and the way alcohol can become the thing we use to keep momentum going when what we actually need is rest or a new cultivated interest or connection or simply permission to stop working and being productive. That's what we're going to look next week, my friends. Until then, choose peace, and I will see you on Thursday. Thanks for listening to the Alcohol Minimalist podcast. Take something you learned from this week's episode and put it into action. Changing your drinking habits and creating a peaceful relationship with alcohol is 100% possible. You can stop worrying, stop feeling guilty about overdrinking, and become someone who desires alcohol less. I work with people in 2 different ways, and you can learn about them over at my website. Go to www.mollywatts.com/workwithme or reach out to me directly. Shoot me an email, molly@mollywatts.com. We'll jump on a call and decide what might work best for you. This podcast is really just the beginning of our conversation. Let's keep it going. If there's one thing I know, it's that change is way easier when you stop trying to do it alone.